The sound of the zipper sliding upward should have been ordinary. Instead, it changed everything. The moment my fingers reached the small metal tab at the back of her dress, the room seemed to fall silent. The city lights beyond the apartment window blurred into soft colors, and for one strange second, the air felt heavier than it should have. She had been talking only moments earlier. Then she went completely still. Not a single movement. Not a single breath that I could hear. And in that unexpected silence, I realized there were things neither of us had been brave enough to say for a very long time. Before we continue, take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who believes in kindness and second chances, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that sometimes the people who change our lives are standing right beside us, waiting for us to notice. 3 years earlier, I never imagined I would end up sharing an apartment with her. When I first moved into the city, I knew nobody. I had a suitcase, a small savings account, and a dream that felt bigger than my confidence. The apartment was old, slightly worn down, and honestly more expensive than I could comfortably afford. The landlord solved that problem by introducing me to another tenant. Her name was Emma. She was organized where I was chaotic. Confident where I was uncertain. Outgoing where I preferred silence. At first, we were simply two strangers trying to survive expensive rent. Nothing more. The first few months were practical and uncomplicated. We divided bills, shared kitchen space, and occasionally watched television in the evenings. We respected each other's boundaries and lived separate lives. But life has a strange way of turning strangers into something much more important. Gradually, routines formed. Morning coffee became a shared ritual. Weekend grocery trips became normal. Long conversations after difficult workdays became expected. Without realizing it, we stopped being roommates and became friends. Real friends. The kind who noticed when the other person was having a bad day without needing an explanation. The kind who remembered small details. The kind who showed up. When my father suffered a health scare 2 years after I moved in, I spent weeks distracted and exhausted. I tried pretending everything was fine. Emma saw through it immediately. One evening I returned home after a long hospital visit. I found dinner waiting on the table. No dramatic speech. No attempt to fix my problems. Just a warm meal and a quiet understanding that I wasn't carrying everything alone. I never forgot that. Not because of the food. Because of what it meant. It was one of those rare moments when someone chooses kindness without expecting recognition. Months later, when Emma lost her job unexpectedly, I had the opportunity to return that kindness. I watched the confident woman I knew begin questioning herself. I watched rejection emails slowly chip away at her optimism. I watched her smile less. For the first time, I saw how much pressure she carried beneath her cheerful personality. Every day she submitted applications. Every day she waited. Every day she worried. And every day I reminded her that one difficult chapter didn't define her future. Eventually she found a new position. A better one. The relief on her face that day was unforgettable. We celebrated with takeout food and cheap dessert from a corner store. Looking back now, I think those were the moments that changed everything. Not grand romantic gestures. Not dramatic confessions. Just two people helping each other survive life. The problem was that somewhere along the way, friendship stopped feeling simple. At least for me. I noticed it slowly. The way I looked forward to hearing her keys unlock the apartment door. The way bad days improved when she was around. The way her laughter seemed capable of brightening entire rooms. I told myself it would pass. After all, she was my roommate. Crossing that line could ruin everything. The friendship. The apartment. The stability we had built together. So I buried those feelings. Months became years. And I said nothing. Then came the evening that changed everything. It started like any ordinary Friday. I returned home from work expecting a quiet night. Instead, I found Emma rushing through the apartment carrying shoes, makeup, and various accessories. She had an important company event. The kind of event that could influence promotions and future opportunities. She looked nervous. Not because she wasn't capable. Because she cared. She disappeared into her room to get ready. About 20 minutes later, her voice called from down the hallway. She needed help. Specifically, she needed someone to zip the back of her dress. I remember laughing and walking toward her room without thinking much about it. Then I reached the doorway. For a moment, I simply stopped. The room was softly illuminated by the golden glow of a bedside lamp. She stood in front of a mirror. Elegant. Beautiful. Completely different from the version of her I usually saw in sweatpants while eating cereal on weekend mornings. The sight caught me off guard. Not because she was attractive. I already knew that. Because seeing her like that made me realize how much I had been taking her presence for granted. I stepped closer. Carefully took hold of the zipper. And slowly pulled it upward. That was when she went completely still. The zipper reached the top. My hand lowered. But neither of us moved. Neither of us spoke. The silence stretched. Something unspoken lingered between us. Something that had been growing for years. Finally, she looked at our reflection in the mirror. There was uncertainty in her eyes. And something else. Something hopeful. The evening continued after that. She attended the event. I stayed home. Yet I couldn't stop thinking about that moment. The stillness. The silence. The feeling that an invisible wall between us had suddenly cracked. When she returned later that night, I was sitting on the balcony. The city below shimmered with thousands of lights. She joined me. Neither of us mentioned the dress. Neither of us mentioned the awkward silence. Instead, we talked. Really talked. About life. About regrets. About dreams we had postponed. About how quickly time passes. Hours slipped away. The conversation felt different from any conversation we'd ever had. More honest. More vulnerable. As midnight approached, she said something that stayed with me. She admitted that the apartment had felt more like home because I was there. A simple sentence. But it hit harder than she probably realized. Because I felt exactly the same. Over the following weeks, things continued changing. Subtly at first. Then unmistakably. We spent more time together. We found excuses to prolong conversations. Small touches lingered slightly longer. Shared glances carried meaning. Yet neither of us crossed the final distance. Fear remained. What if we misunderstood each other? What if we ruined everything? The uncertainty became exhausting. Then life intervened once again. A company offered Emma a position in another city. It was an incredible opportunity. The kind people dream about. The kind nobody should refuse. I congratulated her immediately. And secretly felt my heart break. For the first time, the possibility of losing her became real. Not someday. Soon. Very soon. The weeks before her decision were difficult. Neither of us wanted to discuss what her departure would mean. Avoidance felt safer. Until one rainy evening changed that. The storm outside rattled the apartment windows. Cardboard boxes sat stacked around the living room. Evidence that a decision had almost been made. Emma sat quietly on the couch. I sat across from her. The silence felt heavier than the weather. Then she asked a question. Not about the job. Not about moving. She asked whether I thought some people enter our lives for a reason. The answer came easily. Yes. Without question. Because I couldn't imagine my life without the impact she had made on it. For a long moment she stared at the rain outside. Then she admitted something. She wasn't afraid of moving. She was afraid of leaving people she cared about. My chest tightened. The room suddenly felt smaller. The words I had buried for years pressed against every excuse and every fear. And for the first time, I realized silence carried its own risks. Sometimes saying nothing hurts more than speaking honestly. So I told her the truth. Not dramatically. Not perfectly. Just honestly. I told her she had become the most important person in my life. I told her I looked forward to every day because she was part of it. I told her losing her friendship frightened me. And I told her that somewhere along the way, I had fallen in love with her. The confession left me feeling exposed. Terrified. Certain I had just destroyed everything. But then something unexpected happened. Emma smiled. Not a surprised smile. Not a confused smile. A relieved smile. The kind that appears when someone has been carrying the same secret for far too long. Tears filled her eyes. And she admitted she had been feeling the same way. For longer than either of us wanted to admit. In that moment, all the uncertainty disappeared. Not because the future suddenly became easy. Because honesty finally replaced fear. Months later, she declined the position in the other city. Not because of me. Because she realized happiness wasn't waiting somewhere else. It was already present in the life she had built. Today, when I think about that evening with the dress, I understand why she went completely still. It wasn't the zipper. It wasn't the dress. It wasn't even the moment itself. It was the realization that sometimes the person standing beside us has quietly become the person we cannot imagine living without. And recognizing that truth can stop time for a second. If this story is touching your heart so far, please leave a comment with the words, "Kindness changes everything." Years have passed since then. The apartment is different now. The furniture has changed. The walls have been repainted. Life continues moving forward. But one thing remains exactly the same. Every morning, I still wake up grateful for the person who once started as a stranger sharing rent and somehow became the greatest blessing of my life. Because the strongest relationships are not always built on dramatic beginnings. Sometimes they are built through ordinary days. Shared struggles. Quiet support. Unnoticed sacrifices. And countless acts of kindness that slowly become love. Before this story ends, if it touched your heart in any way, please like the video, leave a comment, share it with someone special, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps keep these emotional stories alive and allows more people to experience messages of hope, love, and second chances. Life rarely announces its most important moments. Sometimes they arrive disguised as ordinary evenings. Sometimes they hide inside simple requests. And sometimes, all it takes is one quiet moment, one shared silence, and one act of kindness to change two lives forever. And that is why I will never forget the night my roommate asked me to zip her dress, and went completely still when I did.